little introduction about the novel. So it follows Piglet, who that is her childhood nickname, which she still uses. And she is getting married in 2 weeks when her fiance Kit reveals an awful truth. And then she is faced with the decision of whether she wants to follow the rules or give in to her desires. And I think it would be good to start with where you first got the idea for Piglet. Did the plot or the character inspire you first?
I love hearing people summarize the novel. Sorry, I'm just lingering around in your opening. So the first thing that came to me for Piglet was the scene where she's cooking for her fiance Kit after he confesses this truth to her. And they're making carbonara, and at that point I didn't know who they were. They weren't named to me, and I hadn't any idea of what happened between them. But the scene of her cooking dinner for him, despite something terrible having happened in their personal life, and this really just like dogged pursuit of domesticity and food specifically and cooking, I found to be really fascinating. That felt really interesting, a dynamic for me to explore. So that's where I stumbled across them there, almost kind of, I wasn't looking for them, but they found me, and I'm pleased they did. And then it kind of grew from there. I was discovering who Piglet was, and that name came very quickly. She was never called anything else. She was Piglet almost immediately once I started fleshing the story out, and I was kind of working out from there, working out what had gone on between them, and why their life seemed to be such a pressure cooker.
That's really interesting. And did Piglet the title come to you straight away, or did you toy with other ideas first, or was that
I
the
never
character is Piglet and
Yeah,
the title is Piglet?
yeah. I never toyed with anything else. It was. I didn't spend much time thinking about the title. I just named it Piglet in a way that was like that. It seems obvious to me that's what it should be called. I don't feel like it could have been anything else. I didn't try to be more creative than just Piglet.
It's an excellent title. It really drew me in straight away.
Yeah.
So you were saying before that you studied food writing for your PhD. And was the research into this one of your favourite aspects of writing the book? What would you say your favourite part of writing your book was?
It's funny because the book kind of has two versions. There's the thesis version, which is shorter, and there's a few differences, and then there's the version that is so wonderfully on your shelf. And that version's not incredibly different, but I see it as quite a different piece of work in the end. And I think of the two processes of writing those books as they have a distinct branch once the kind of main drafting and editing was done. And my favourite part of writing the book, I think in both versions, is I did this thing that I call, in like a really tongue-in-cheek way, method writing, which I loosely am basing on method acting, but without any of the associated what polite word can I use? I suppose diva-ishness of that. So I was cooking all the meals in the book that Piglet eats and she cooks. I cooked alongside her to try and develop a kind of sensory empathy and a way of slipping into her skin more easily. I feel like that's always what I want to know about characters and people for that matter. Is like, what have you had for breakfast? Did you like it? What does it mean to you? And so that was my favorite part of writing the book, was a kind of research through cooking, because what great excuse to try and make a croque and bouche.
Yeah, and really immerse yourself in the novel and have all that lovely food. One of my favorite parts of the novel was all the different food descriptions. They were just beautiful. The scene with the curry and the burgers was just, I've since reread it and they stuck out to me for a second time.
Yeah, they were really fun to write. I think for those scenes especially, because it's not a simple pleasure. There's a kind of sinister, for me it feels like there's a sinister undercurrent in both of those in some ways, and also something else at play for Piglet in both scenes where there's a sense of power, whether she's gaining it or losing it, I think it's underscored and kind of accentuated by the food that's surrounding it.
Yeah, and there's almost a insecurity underneath it that she's having to push through, especially when she's eating out and
Yeah,
worrying what people are going to think about her, but also almost trying not to care.
yeah,
I
yeah,
found it so interesting. Another thing I really enjoyed about Piglet was that it had this amazing wealth of side characters, which were so well developed that they almost felt real. I think my favorite was Margot, definitely. Do you have a favorite side character?
a favorite that I actually think is a nice person or a favorite to write.
Both.
Um, I think in terms of, I think the person that I'd want in my corner would probably be Margot's wonderful, but I kind of like I love Franny in a way. I think that
Yeah,
there's a there's something about the sisterhood there that is there's an understanding between them, and I feel like she would be a great friend. But my favorite to write was probably Piglet's dad because there's kind of a sadness there, and I like the sad. I'm when I'm right, I just like picking at that kind of feeling and trying to bring out both the tenderness and the melancholy of it. And so I think to write, that's the kind of character that I like to write because I think it has so much power in the narrative, even in such a small, he gets, relatively short amount of airtime. So yeah, the person I'd actually like to be friends with Franny, the person I'd like to write would be Piglet's dad.
I really loved the scene in the kitchen before the wedding with Piglet and her dad, where she's trying to open up to him and he almost feels like he's pulling back because he doesn't know quite how to react in that
Yeah,
situation.
yeah,
And it was a scene that made me really quite emotional because it was
yeah,
so vulnerable almost.
yeah. Yeah, I enjoyed writing that one. I think there's lots of moments in the book where characters are failing one another at really important times where they need support. Piglet failing people and also Piglet being failed by other people. And I think, yeah, I really like to, if that can be built up in a way that feels like, oh, that's sad, and then that be effective. I'm pleased that it made you sad. Hooray!
What was your favorite relationship to write between your characters? Was it Piglet and her dad, or did you enjoy another aspect of it?
I kind of like the ones that have a bit of a twist. So I liked Piglet and Darren. I liked writing that. Again, it's like these relationships that are maybe we think we know what's going on there, but they have a bit of a kernel of interest in a way that maybe you could take it in lots of different directions. So I liked writing Piglet and Darren for that reason, and Darren's character arc particularly. And I like Piglet and Cecilia as well, Kit's mum, because I think there's such an interesting dynamic between Piglet and a future mother-in-law, especially someone who she aspires to or wants to impress. I just think that there's much at play there in terms of her aspiration, a kind of class difference, um, any kind of bodily differences or perceived bodily differences. There was lots to get into.
I really liked the relationship between Piglet and her sister Franny. Um, I found it really interesting the different ways that they would interact with each other when different things were going on between them and the two different sisters having their like own issues and how they would interact with each other and the difference between how Piglet would interact with Margot compared to her sister. I found that dynamic really interesting to read.
Yeah, yeah, yes, that's an interesting observation. Piglet and the sister and Margot. Yeah, she treats them quite differently.
And they react to her very differently as
Mm,
well, and how when she finds out what's happened, and Margot
yeah,
reacts very differently to how Franny did.
yeah.
Just going back to the beginning now, when did you first start to write both fiction and your like research into
Mm.
food writing?
So I've been my research began in 2019, and I passed my Viva, not the just December gone, but the December before that. So it was 3 years of research, which was great. Like it was what a wonderful way to spend 3 years, researching food writing and writing and eating pastries. What a time, what a life. But writing fiction, I've written for ages. Like even when I was younger, I remember writing on my parents' like broadband PC, like writing bits of fiction and, you know, rubbish. But I suppose more seriously, maybe for over 10 years now. Yeah, I suppose so. I think when I was at university, because I studied English at uni, I was starting to think about writing my own stuff. Yeah, I suppose I started then. I'm really pleased I didn't publish anything then, but that's when I started.
Do you have any seeds of ideas in like a drawer somewhere from when you were writing then that you might go back to at some point?
I did quite a few short stories at that point because I was on like a write to submit and get published and try and build up something. And I like the ideas at that point, but I don't really like the execution. And I feel like I've done it, and I've kind of I've spent that idea now on something that was not my best, but maybe I'll go back and pillage them.
I find it so interesting hearing about how people have those ideas in the back and then someday they just come out again.
Mm.
And then who knows what can happen with them.
Yeah.
What about your ideal writing day? If you had a whole day and all you had to do was write, how would your ideal day go?
I think this is such a hard question because my ideal writing day is like 1 or 2 hours of good writing, and then I'm off doing other stuff because some of my most productive time is spent reading or walking around outside and thinking, like, it's percolating. So a writing day is if I get good words down, if I can get, you know, 500, 1,000, 2,000 good words down in a couple of hours, and then I can go and watch a great film or read some more of my book and underline it and think, wow, that's amazing. Or walk around and some more dialogue floats to me that I can quickly write down on my phone. That's a perfect day. Like, I'm not greedy. I don't wish for more, just a little bit of success. And that would be lovely.
Like when you go for a walk and a great idea comes to you and you're like,
Yes.
that's it. That's
Yeah.
my work for the day.
Yeah. I think that I'm kind of having to, because I wrote Piglet in a very structured way, and the first draft was really very bad, like very, very bad. And it was only in a really heavy and thoughtful re-edit did it really emerge in the way that it kind of looks today. And I think that I'm trying to adjust more to capturing what feel like good pieces of writing when they come to me out the sky, and being more thoughtful with them rather than trying to just write rubbish down at once. So yeah, I'm trying to take, if I, like you said, if a perfect sentence comes to me whilst I'm out walking, that can be counted as valid.
That's a really interesting idea because I always work with the idea of a blank page is what you don't want, and any words are good words.
Yeah.
But to hear you doing it the other way and wanting to write the good sentence first, that's really interesting.
I was and am in your school of thought as well. Like when I wrote Piglet, I was like, I'm getting 1,000 words down today, and they might be complete rubbish, but they were rubbish, and it's like I'm interested to discover whether I can skip that phase. I might be a bit ambitious, but yeah, I want to try and think more thoughtfully. Wow. What great description. Be more thoughtful about getting the words on the page. Can I save time and be more focused about that?
When I write, I maybe like 6 out of 7 days of the week, I will do my thinking. And then on that 7th day, I will do all the words. So friends always joke with me that I either don't write or I write 5,000 words. And there's no in between because I am very much, I don't want a blank page. I just want all the words down. And they're not good words because I've written 5,000 words in about 5 hours. But yeah. But then I do all my thinking on the rest of the week when I don't have my laptop with me.
Yeah. Had a very religious tone that on the 7th day I write.
And that is currently what's working for me, but maybe when I have more time during the week, I will try and be more thoughtful. Maybe I'll try that with whatever I decide to do next.
It's tricky, isn't it? Because I think that for writers, I don't know if you agree, the words on the page feel like, well, I've made progress. I have made
Yeah,
progress. Your 6 thinking days are so valuable,
yeah,
and will be informing so much of your work that's going to eventually come out. But I think it's hard to attribute value, or I find it hard to attribute value to time where I'm not being visibly productive. I'm not visibly outputting.
yeah. I measure my productivity on how far through I am. But
Mm.
I have, a very long note on my phone from ideas that have come to me on the other 6 days.
Yeah.
So I need to start counting that one more.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think you mentioned that earlier that your first scene that came to you was the scene where Piglet is cooking for Kit. Did you write the rest of the novel chronologically, or did you outline each chapter before you started and then jumped around based on what you felt like writing?
Yeah. I always feel really embarrassed when I'm asked this because I'm not a mysterious writer or, ethereal creative in any way. I'm very plot driven. So once that had come together, I planned the entire book out. And in the edit, I rearranged and I tightened things up and I chopped things out. But I like to have a roadmap. I like to know where I'm going. And that's how I wrote that first draft was, okay, these are going to be the beats of the novel, and I'm going to write chronologically. And occasionally I jumped forward, like I jumped to do the burger scene because I was like, to keep me going through the shoulder parts of the novel. But now I'm very plot driven, and I think that's, for me, that's important because I'm amazed and in awe of writers who say, I just write and we see where it goes. And it's like,
Yeah,
how? Where are you going? What
me
will you
too.
do?
Me too. Writers who just like get up and just write beginning to end. How do you figure out the pacing on that?
Yeah, yeah,
I'd spend like 5,000 words describing like one house.
yeah, yes. Yeah, don't give me any leeway. Like I can have no free reign. Like this is what we're doing.
I will massively waste my time if I don't
Yeah,
figure out exactly what I'm writing before I start.
yeah.
Um, and in terms of other writers, when you were writing Piglet, did you have other writers who inspired you?
Yes, lots. So um the ones that I think about in relation to my thesis are writers like Lara Williams, who wrote the excellent Supper Club novel. I was also looking at Eliza Clark and Boy Parts at that point as well, mostly about body image and kind of writing about thinking about food or lack of. Um, Megan Hunter's The Harpy as well was really influential in food in the domestic space and using food as a way to kind of attune personality and to aspire to be something else or something, quote, better. Um, and since then, I think um, I've been inspired in the edits of Piglet by people like Elizabeth Strout and Anne Patchett. I love people who write well about what seem to be the human relationships between people and how they can be so gravitational in our lives and um, really change dynamics and the course of what might happen to us.
The first time I read Piglet, was reading it when I went to see Boy Parts in the theatre,
Oh, were
and
you?
thought that read like watching Boy Parts and then reading Piglet and seeing those different ways of talking about food was so interesting.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
then the second time I listened to it on audiobook just after it was released.
yeah.
And then straight after read Milk Fed by Melissa Broder, which was
Oh,
also
did
a
you?
very
Yes, yeah,
dynamic between different ways of writing about food and
yeah,
in relation to women's bodies.
yes.
And thought that was really
Interesting
interesting.
pairings.
Yeah,
Do you gravitate towards writing about food, or are you just kind of a voracious reader and will just follow whatever you're after?
I just read whatever my friends tell me to read.
It's very diligent of you.
So my friend recently told me to read Milk Fed, so I was like, okay.
Yeah, yeah. I will.
Um, but I don't gravitate towards writing about food very much. But I do read a lot of food novels. I
Yeah.
did also read recently Comfort Eating by Grace Dent, which was
Oh, yes, that's on my
also
list to read.
very interesting.
Yeah,
Not, it's non-fiction, I think. Yeah,
yeah.
non-fiction book about food and the weird things that people eat when no one's watching. I think
Mm.
one of them was eating beans on toast with crumbled Wotsits.
Oh, would the
which,
Whatsit not kind of melt? I wonder what the structural
yeah,
integrity of a crumbled Whatsit is.
and I couldn't visualize it.
Oh,
Like,
interesting.
yeah, what
What's,
happens to the what's it?
yeah, I would just imagine it would kind of just like melt away into the beans, but maybe not. I'm
Yeah,
guessing.
and just I would imagine it not to keep its crunch and go a bit
Yeah,
soft.
yeah.
Yeah,
What would be your kind of weird comfort food to eat?
I I love I love plain toast with a bit of butter, and then I like dip it in ketchup and Marmite. No, not
Wow.
Marmite, mustard.
Wow.
Marmite would be
Gosh.
even weirder, but yeah,
Do you think I think mustard is weirder? What kind of mustard though? Are we talking
like
English or
like American mustard.
okay, so not like properly nose tingly.
No, just
Wow.
a
I like
bit
the condiment. Just your
like like a like
toe
a
chip.
burger with but with toast instead.
Yeah, but also no patty and no cheese.
No, yeah, just the bread.
Just bread and ketchup. Oh.
What about yours?
Um, mine are really I wish I had something that was that mad. Mine are kind of just depressing, like scoops of peanut butter just out of the jar or um gherkins straight from the fridge. I can eat a lot of gherkins in
Mm.
one go, which make me sweat a bit, but there's no regret. I've also just discovered recently that Marks and Spencer's do this thing called hazelnut cream. Have you come across this?
I've heard about this.
You've heard tell of the. Do you
Yeah,
like Kinder Buenos or
yeah, I do. I've
yeah,
not tried it yet, but
yeah.
maybe I'll
That's
try
just
that on
like
toast and
it.
replace my Marmite.
It would be great on toast. I have never had it on toast because I can never get it out of just and not just eat it straight from the jar. I'm just a. I have clearly no control or patience. I just want to consume quickly. There can be no preparation, not even toast. Just shove it in.
I don't know if is there anything else that's strange that I eat? I don't think so. I think it is just the
Dipping
mustard
into
and ketchup
mustard,
on toast.
great. Yeah,
Yeah.
wonderful.
And moving on to your post-publication time, because it was published in the UK on the 25th of January. So is that a week or 2 weeks?
Two, I
2 weeks.
think that. Two, yeah.
What has been your favorite moment from the publication process so far?
Undoubtedly meeting readers and talking about it. Like it's been weird because I finished writing it a few years ago. Um, I suppose I've been editing and doing copy edits and stuff, but it's been odd to talk about it again with such um just to have people interested in something I have been interested in for such a long time feels like, should I pay you people to do this? Because I'm having a great time. And so that's just been wonderful. And I love hearing about what people's theories are, and what people's favorite foods are, what they're, putting out the fridge. I just think it's such a book. People are such wonderful, interested and generous individuals. And I am just having the time of my life talking to as many of them as possible.
I always say I've never met a mean book person.
Yeah, they don't
Everyone,
exist.
everyone
Yeah,
I've always met has always been so nice.
yeah.
What do you think could be improved about the publication process?
Hmm. It's an interesting question. I think there's a kind of self-imposed, like right now I am in my thinking phase, read book two.
Mm.
Um, and there's definitely a level of not publisher, not pressure from anyone else, but I am putting pressure on myself to be like, well, I probably need to write something else now because I need to crack on with whatever's next. And in a way, this is all interesting. All of this whole process is new to me and it's all information. It's all um, something that might inform a creative spark of some idea. And I kind of want to just also exist in that as well without thinking too industriously about the next book, whilst also trying to think industriously about the next book. So I think it's that what could be improved is my mindset of not trying to jump to the next thing and just exist and enjoy, and also just soak up these moments in the detail of what's going on, because it's all something eventually one could use for a book, I suppose.
Yeah, absolutely. You
Everything's material.
just want to sit and enjoy the moment
Mm.
and then on to book two.
Yes, yeah.
How is your thinking phase going so far?
I'm really enjoying the thinking phase. I kind of have, I'm pretty sure that I have now. I start with a few ideas that then dialogue kind of comes to me and I write it down on my phone and I'm thinking, no, I think this is kind of coalescing into one idea. And I enjoy this phase so much. Like the next will be properly mapping stuff out and being like, okay, well, what are we actually doing? Where are we going? But I like this because I like the kind of carte blanche to read as much as I can, to watch as much film as I can, and to really immerse myself in the job of inspiration. Because I think that I was reading something this morning. It's the new In Haste podcast. I don't know if you've heard of it, by Alice Vincent and Charlotte Runch. It's just starting. It's about.
I haven't, but I will definitely be.
It's a writing podcast, and they were talking about. I think it was Charlotte Runch. They do an essay to accompany the podcast, which is such a nice way of doing listening and writing and reading. And they were talking about how indulgent they felt about reading, and really, actually, reading is everything. When you're a writer, it's just the whole thing, and a human. And this is a very long-winded way of saying I'm enjoying the process of thinking. I like reading books.
Yeah, reading is one of my favorite parts of my day.
Yeah.
And I also just find it quite helpful to see what other people are doing and just.
Yeah, reading is research. Like, I feel strongly about legitimizing it as something that's crucial for writers and not like an indulgence. Like, it isn't like woohoo that it's an indulgence as well. Like, the side effect is pleasure, but it is essential work as well, I think, when this is the kind of work that you do.
I will no longer be feeling guilty about reading in
Do
my
not
writing
go forward.
time. And if you only had 5 words to convince someone to read Piglet, how would you describe it?
Okay, I had to write these down because I was like, there's no way I'm going to do 5 words of a book that do it justice off the spot. So I've gone for pleasure, control, dark, delicious, and propulsive. I thought I'm not going to try and do a phrase. I'm just going to list words.
Yeah, I would very much agree with those.
Thank you. That's a hard question.
Yeah, it was really hard. When I wrote the question, I was like, I'm not sure if I could do this.
Yeah. Yes, it needs thinking. I think off the cuff is tricky.
Yeah, I should have thought of my own 5 words, but
I'm really tempted to fire it back at you, but I thought that would be cruel considering how I was like, well, this is a hard question.
I think I'd go with hungry, vulnerable. I've still got 3 left.
5's a lot.
It is a lot. I thought if I said 3, that would make it harder.
Maybe we'll go for, you can go for 3. We'll let you off the last 2.
Now I'm finding it hard to choose just one. I think for the last one I would go with fantastic.
George, you can stay. We'll keep you.
And at the Another Book podcast, each episode ends with a no, not a book rating, a biscuit rating. So we thought today we would do Krispy Kreme donuts because, of course, the Piglet cover has the beautiful donuts on. So what would you rate your Krispy Kreme?
What flavour are we talking? Do I get to choose?
You get to choose. I've never had an original glazed, so I'm going with.
I thought you never had one at all.
So I had my first one last year, and I had the pink one with the icing on and the jam inside, and also the ring donut with the pink icing on. So it's very fitting.
Yes, it is fitting, but I think I personally believe that donuts should be eaten with custard in. Is my school of thought. I'm a custard donut kind of person. And to that end, I think there's a Biscoff one, which recently, since October and onwards, I cannot really stop thinking about Biscoff. I think I might have a condition where I have like a obsessive tendency towards it. So that would be, how am I rating? Am I doing like a 5-star thing? Am I just saying how many I would gorge at one time?
I think maybe out of 10.
Oh, out of 10. On the scale of all donuts, because I think like god tier donuts. So like, have you had Bread Ahead donuts?
No,
Okay, there's a place in London called Bread Ahead. Do you know Bread Ahead, the bakery?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, and they do the founder Justin Galatly calls them I think he calls them custard bombs, and they're like the size of a large person's fist, and they are full of like delicious creme patissier. And the vanilla ones are superb. And if you're a jam person, they have nice jam as well. But as I've mentioned, custard forever.
No, that sounds incredible. I
Yeah,
will be giving those a
that's
go.
like that's like my god tier 10 out of 10 donut. So I would put this Biscoff one maybe at like a 7 because it's very nice and it's satisfying, but it isn't the size of a small person's head. So I just want, volume, I think matters for donuts.
Yep, fair enough. And it's interesting to compare them to
Yes.
get it
Yes.
on the scale. I
Yeah.
think I'd give the ring with the pink icing maybe like an 8.
Wow, a ring and 8.
Yeah,
It
it
was
was
good.
nice.
Yeah.
I'm not a huge sweet tooth person, so I liked it because it didn't have
Like
too
mustard.
much.
We've covered this.
I think, yeah, mustard. And I think the iced one with the jam in the middle, I'd maybe give a 6. It was just
Interesting.
a bit sweet for me, a bit too much going on. I could
How
only
do
eat
you
half of
feel
it.
about like basic supermarket bagged donuts, like jam donuts?
Oh, I love those.
Yeah, because I think they might be better because they're kind of
Yeah.
nostalgic and you get 5 of them. So it's like, as I've said,
And they're like a
quantity.
pound.
Exactly. I
Yeah.
wonder if they're kind of like, I might put them, if I give the Lotus a 7, I might give them like a 5 or a 6. I think that's a good, I think that's a good innings. But
Yeah.
I put a ring donut much nearer to the 2. I like a feeling.
Yeah. I think just for me, it's a bit too much going on,
Yeah.
especially when it's iced on top. I think had it just been filled in the middle, it would have been higher.
That's
But
very
just
chic of you. Not just be full trashy. I'm like, give me everything. And you're like, no, pare it back. Have some sense.
whereas if it was savory foods, it would
Yeah.
give me everything.
Yeah.
The ketchup, the mustards, the toast.
Yeah, that wouldn't work. Would that work for a donut? Does one do a savory donut?
Oh, I've never seen one,
No.
but I'd
But
be
let's
willing to give
order
it a
that.
go.
Yeah, we could. Yeah, maybe we'll do this afterwards.
I'm gonna make a recipe. I'm gonna do it.
Yeah.
Find that savory donut. That's all my questions. So thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. It was a pleasure, genuine pleasure to talk about various foods and writing with you.